Imagine you have a 9-month-old baby and you wake up only to find her not in her bed and the front door's open. So this happened to me a few years ago when Delaney was just that age. I wake up not to find her in my bed or in her bed. Nowhere in the house is she, but the front door's open. I proceed to do what every mother does: panic, freak out, all of that. I go to find whatever clothes I can. I think I put a sweatshirt on as pants. That's how crazy I was in this moment. I head for the door, only to see a strange man standing there holding my child. I immediately grab her and collapse to the floor. What just happened? Well, this thing called the amygdala just shot panic through my entire body. This little thing inside your brain is your trigger response for stress, anxiety. My anxiety shot through the roof. I probably look like an absolute crazy person to this man. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about that story. The person that left the door unlocked was my husband. I had this great opportunity when he got home to be really loving and communicate how scared I was, or to have a panic response and do as much damage as I could punishing him. Let's just say I didn't do the best option, but I've learned since then. So you have to know that really your body chemically responds to stressful situations, to anxiety. This amygdala will trigger that panic response. That's what happens. We have the opportunity to react or to respond in these moments. So when you react, you often operate in punishment. Let's talk about this so popular verse that I love dearly. There's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. It's such a powerful verse. You know, God is not the punisher anymore. He is the Redeemer. He is all about freedom and love. So we need to remove that idea of fear and punishment and insert the idea of connection and love. We really need to go after what it is that when God's talking about, there's no fear in love. Fear and love are mortal enemies. They should never be in the same place together. So as a parent, you can't operate in those same places, because when you introduce fear, you introduce punishment so easily. So in that situation where my daughter was gone and my husband returned home from work, and all I want to do is be angry and punish him for the anxiety and the fear that I had. The better response would be to communicate how scared I was, how I thought I lost her, and that I need him to make sure he locks the door before he leaves. That is the pursuit that you're going after, situation after situation with your spouse and with your children. When they scare us, we need to make sure that punishment is not our first response. One of the biggest things that we often do is we believe this lie. There's these big lies that we believe about control. You know, the reason why people enter into the world of control is because they believe that if I am violent, I'll have more power over you. If I can hit you, you'll listen to me. If someone puts a gun to your back and does a stick up and says, "Give me all your money," I didn't give it to you willingly. I was afraid for my life. That doesn't mean that you have power over me. It's really, you just made me do something. There's no real power in there. I didn't give you the opportunity to take my money. It's different if I voluntarily give you my funds than if you try and rob me at gunpoint. The other thing is that if I get angry enough, if I get loud enough, if I get aggressive enough in my words, then you'll do what I say. Well, let me tell you, arguments are one of the most damaging things that you can do to your relationship with your children. We'll talk about love languages later, but the reality is that these words are so damaging. So if I get angry enough, if I start to punish you, I have this sense that I am being powerful. I have some control over you. Another lie that people believe is that other people can control me. This is something that we, not on purpose, teach our children, though, is that I'm big and you're little, so you have to listen to me, that I can control other people. I can't make you to do anything. Believe me, if I could make you to do something, it would be to make your bed and do your homework without me asking 15 times. That's the truth of it. But I can't make you do anything. That is a lie, a big lie that most parents think that is true. You have to remember you cannot control other people, and that goes for your children. Just because they're little, just because they're small, you cannot control them. You have to move away from this thinking, from this way of functioning, and you have to introduce something that I feel is one of the most powerful tools that parents can have, and that's choices. Why give choices? Choices is one of the most powerful things I've discovered as a mom because I love being able to introduce my kids to the idea of we're going back and forth on this one. So when dinner comes around, I say, do you want the blue plate or do you want the green plate? Do I care? No. But does that child feel so empowered that they got an opportunity to choose what color plate they got? Yes, they do. Well, what happens to our relationship? They have this appreciation that I invited them into the process of simply choosing the color plate they used. So when they're 3, the choice is a smaller choice, maybe not as big of an expense. But when they're 16, those choices can get bigger and scarier. So that's why we want to introduce this next concept of control. Toddlers and teenagers are control freaks. They love having control. Why? Because it's one of the deepest human needs they could possibly have. They want to have a say in what's happening to them. They want to be involved in the process. It's one of the biggest things that we can give them, to introduce to them that they have the opportunity to choose. I've always heard the only difference between a teenager and a toddler is body hair. And I have to say, I completely believe it, because most of the tools that I've seen used on toddlers still translate into teenagers, because these two people, they have this desperate need to control things. So when you introduce choices, you introduce the opportunity for them to have control. So let's talk about these teenagers. Teenagers, when you take away their cell phone, they're going to have what? That panic response, just like I did when I discovered that Delaney was not in the house anymore. The reason why we want to make sure that we have this shared control is because these little people and these adult growing people, they're people. They're just simply that. Why do we have 100 choices at every fast food restaurant? Because we like having choices. We like having control. We have to know that I get to minimize any anxiety that I have by having as much opportunity to make those choices. So when I can offer my toddler the blue plate or the green plate, they have reduced anxiety. When I can tell my teenager, do you want to do the dishes at 5 or 8? They have reduced anxiety. They get to be a part of this process. They have the shared control. They get to be involved in what's going on with them. One of the things I love about loving our kids on purpose is choice qualifications. One of the biggest things that you have to know as a parent is that choices are just such a powerful resource to have. And with those choices, you need to know that there's 2 choices, A and B. You can't say A or A. It has to be 2 choices. You have to make sure that you're going to be completely happy when they pick B and you're really hoping they pick A. These 2 choices should be both wonderful options. Stick to your choices. You really have to follow through. That's one of the biggest things that I see that parents struggle with is their follow through. So say you give a choice of feed the dog at 5 or 8, and they pick 8 and they don't feed the dog. Well, what happens is you end up feeding the dog. So make sure that when you pick these 2 choices, either one makes you deliriously happy and you follow through with it. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is you decide or I decide. So with those toddlers, and you say, do you want to be fun or room? And they don't want to respond to you, you say, you decide or I decide. I'm still giving you the opportunity to make this choice on your own, but I will get involved if you need me to. I love choice qualifications, and I love the idea of moving away from the lies of control. I really want you to grasp these concepts, to go after them. Choices are probably one of the biggest things that parents struggle with, so I would challenge you in giving choices whenever and wherever necessary. Do you want to buckle yourself, or can I do it for you? Do you want to sit in this chair or that chair? Really, these choices should happen all day long wherever you possibly can apply them. It may sound silly and it may feel silly, but believe me, practice is what's going to help you come down when you really need it in that moment. So please, I hope you follow through with these choices, and I hope you find the strength to learn to move out of the lies of power and build that heart-to-heart connection with your kids.